We have already proven interoperability with NATO standards. They are real for Ukraine, real on the battlefield, and in all aspects of our interaction. We trust each other and help each other. This is what the alliance is, de facto. Today, Ukraine is applying to make it de jure, under a procedure consistent with our significance for the protection of our entire community, under an accelerated procedure.
We can now bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, would Vladimir Putin have been expecting this, Ukraine to apply for fast-track NATO membership, which would be his worst nightmare, I would think?
Look, I mean, expecting it or not expecting it doesn't matter. Look, what Volodymyr Zelensky is essentially doing here is he's giving back as good as he's gotten from Putin. Putin is basically, in Zelensky's view and most of the world's view, the West, the Europe, and all of their allies, has basically acted dishonestly and with a lack of integrity, doesn't hold to his promises. There's absolutely no purpose from Zelensky's point of view in having any pretext of saying, well, we'll hold off on applying for NATO membership. We'll wait for some sort of peace talks or negotiation or whatever. He sees absolutely no prospect after today. I mean, Zelensky's known this all along, but now today it's been really formalized and officialized. No prospect that a Russian leader in the guise of Vladimir Putin is ever going to come to a negotiating table with the intention of negotiating what Zelensky would see as an honest peace. So why shouldn't? I mean, Putin's going for broke. Putin's doubling down, going ahead with what the world is calling an illegal annexation based on sham referendums, violating under international law the sovereignty of Ukraine. So what is holding, in Zelensky's view, why would we wait? What's holding us back? We may as well apply for NATO because, in essence, he's already cooperating with NATO. He's already basically NATO and has been expressed its will at some point down the road in the future.
His weapons are supplied by NATO member states.
Exactly. His weapons are being supplied by NATO member states, and the West has been extremely clear that is a deliberate, intentional policy. But the West has also made equally clear until now that it was not going to formally admit Ukraine as a NATO member because all along that was going to be the justification for Putin. Once Ukraine's a NATO member, then it could obviously,
escalate.
Escalate. But what's there to escalate here? I mean, in other words, right now, then it would be a proxy war against the West, absolutely against the West. If Ukraine were a NATO member, attack against one is attack against all. The other NATO members would be incumbent on them. They would be required under that charter to come to the aid of Ukraine. Right now, what does Zelensky, from his point of view, have to lose? He figures that if I don't do this, if I do this, my country's being invaded, our sovereignty is being violated. And if we do this, he's going to continue anyway. Our sovereignty is going to be violated. Our territory is going to be annexed. So from his point of view, there's nothing perhaps substantively different in what he's doing today. He's just formally acknowledging the reality that he doesn't have an honest negotiating partner in Vladimir Putin, and that there's absolutely no grounds or logical reason that he should delay this NATO application, which he had wanted at the beginning of the war, but had been putting off. There's no reason to do it from his point of view.
It's one thing for Finland and Sweden to apply for NATO membership, quite another thing for Ukraine to apply for NATO membership. And I just want to find out from you if you think NATO members have an appetite to really up the ante because they
don't. They've been very clear. They obviously don't want to do anything. We heard more veiled nuclear threats from Vladimir Putin today. The jury's out on, you could have the debate endlessly. Would he, will he, won't he? What sort of nuclear weapon? Would he use a small tactical nuclear weapon? Look, we saw today that Vladimir Putin and our correspondents have observed, he is going for broke. He is doubling down. He is now more than ever hardwired to the grievances that have driven his agenda, a more and more nationalistic, ultra-nationalistic, ultra-patriotic, anti-Western diatribe-driven sort of agenda. And Europe is very cognizant of that, and Europe is gone out of its way not to do anything that might be construed on legal grounds by Putin as doing anything that would invite him to be able to use that nuclear response.
I wonder what they were chanting there.
So they were, I believe they were chanting Россия, Russia, Россия, breaking it down to 3 syllables. Reminded me of that moment with Donald Trump and the orb when he first went to Saudi Arabia a little bit, and they all joined hands around that orb. totally irrelevant.
I know, yes.
But what's interesting here is Europe, Finland and Sweden are different. They are on a fast track, and they quickly got their membership in NATO. This is going to be obviously a longer and more deliberate process. What this is a formal, let's be clear about what this is today. It's not Ukraine joining NATO. It is Volodymyr Zelensky pushing back at Putin's annexation, illegal annexation of these 4 areas in Ukraine, Russian-occupied areas in Ukraine, answering him in kind by saying, we are now going to formally request a fast track, as he calls it, application for NATO membership, putting into practice what effectively already is happening anyway. This war, Putin, perhaps against his own desires, has perversely driven Ukraine closer to NATO, driven Ukraine to this very type of step into NATO's hands. He wanted Ukraine to stay as far clear, steer the widest berth possible of NATO. And by virtue of this war, and by virtue that's culminated today in the illegal annexation of these territories, Volodymyr Zelensky feels that he has been driven and has had no choice but to take the very step that Putin ostensibly launched this war in order to prevent.
Douglas, thank you very much.